Mexico has conducted what is said to be the largest raid on a migrant caravan, detaining nearly 400 people. And this may be in response to Trump's rhetoric, which increasingly blames Mexico for not doing enough to stop the migrant crisis. We've already seen 2 local jurisdictions near the border declare a state of emergency because they cannot handle the influx of illegal immigrants. Though we're only a few months into the year, we've already surpassed the total amount of illegal immigrant apprehensions of last year, which means this year we will likely double the amount of apprehensions. Whether or not that's a crisis is entirely your opinion, but there seriously is a problem. In response to news that a 10,000 person strong caravan is heading through Mexico towards the US, Donald Trump is now threatening to shut down parts of the southern border. Today, let's take a look at what's going on with the latest news in the migrant crisis and what happened with the largest raid on a migrant caravan yet. But before we get started, make sure you follow me on Minds over at minds.com/Timcast. I'm hoping to break 100,000 subscribers, and I need your help to do it. But more importantly, I want to make sure I am building up a channel where you can follow me that won't censor me in the event I cover something too controversial. So again, follow me at minds.com/Timcast. And if you want to support this video, just share it on social media to help spread the news. From NBC this morning, Mexico conducts largest raid on migrant caravan members. Quote, "We don't want for them to just have free passage, not just out of legal concerns, but for questions of safety," said Mexico's president. Central American migrants traveling through southern Mexico toward the U.S. on Tuesday fearfully recalled their frantic escape from police the previous day, scuttling under barbed wire fences into pastures and then spending the night in the woods after hundreds were detained in a raid. In the Chiapas state town of Tonala, migrants flocked to one of the few places they felt they could be safe, the local Roman Catholic church, only to start with fear at the sound of passing ambulances' sirens. "There are people still lost up in the woods. The woods are very dangerous," said Arturo Hernandez, a sinewy 59-year-old farmer from Comayagua, Honduras, who fled through the woods with his grandson. "They waited until we were resting and fell upon us, grabbing children and women." Mexican immigration authorities said 371 people were detained Monday in what was the largest single raid so far on a migrant caravan since the group started moving through the country last year. The once large caravan of about 3,000 people was essentially broken up by the raid as migrants fled into the hills, took refuge at shelters and churches, or hopped passing freight trains. A brave few groups straggled along the highways, but with dozens of police and immigration checkpoints, they were bound to be caught. "They were hunting us," Nunez said. "As he sees it, the only thing to do is go on alone, see how far he can make it. Now we are afraid of everyone who looks at us or approaches." While U.S. President Donald Trump has ramped up public pressure on Mexico to do more to stem the flow of Central American migration through its territory, López Obrador has rejected criticism from some that the immigration policy seems unclear or even contradictory. The story concludes by saying that Mexican officials said last month they would try to contain migrants in the isthmus of Tehuantepec, Mexico's narrowest stretch and the easiest to control. About 300 migrants hopped a train Monday to Ixtepec in Oaxaca. The news of this raid comes just a day after the Washington Examiner reported mother of all caravans heads north. 10,000 migrants due in Mexico City any day. A massive caravan of approximately 10,000 migrants traveling through Mexico in hopes of reaching the United States is expected to arrive in Mexico City this week, according to local media reports on the group's movements. The group has been described by Mexico's Interior Secretary, Olga Sanchez Cordero, as Caravana Madre, which has been widely referred to as the mother of all caravans in American media. Cordero said in late March the group would be blocked by federal forces when they arrived at the isthmus of Tehuantepec, which is 250 miles southeast of Mexico City and 100 miles northeast of the Mexico-Guatemala border. Mexican officials said they have deported thousands of people this month, but 10,000 have made it past federal officers and intend on traveling to the U.S.-Mexico border. Caravans making their way from Central America to the U.S. began grabbing national media attention last spring when a group of a few thousand people prompted executive action from President Trump. Trump responded by deploying the National Guard to the 4 southern border states to free up Border Patrol agents from administrative and non-law enforcement jobs. Newsweek reported on the 16th, Donald Trump has ordered thousands more troops to Mexican border, new deployment document suggests. 4 Defense Department sources told Newsweek the document appears to show between 9,000 to 10,000 more U.S. forces heading to the southwest border over the next few months. However, The Pentagon said Tuesday the document is misleading as not every individual service member in a unit selected to deploy will go. A Pentagon spokesperson told Newsweek by phone Tuesday morning that U.S. military planners are anticipating sending a brigade minus, or about 3,000 additional U.S. forces, to join units already at the border, but they had not received a new request for assistance from Homeland Security to identify how many additional troops would be needed. The announcement that more troops would be sent to the border came just days before we saw a county declare a state of emergency regarding immigration. The story says a southern New Mexico county has demanded that Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham use the National Guard to reopen Customs and Border Patrol checkpoints that were closed last month. Otero County on Wednesday declared a state of emergency, noting the need for open checkpoints to stop drugs and illegal activity at the border, the Alamogordo Daily News reported. Checkpoints in the area shut down last month as agents were pulled to help process an influx of migrants claiming asylum at the border. Otero County Commission Chairman Guy Griffin said if the county's demand is not met in 1 week's time, it will provide its own security for the checkpoints. Griffin also threatened taking legal action against the state. In Yuma, Arizona, they also declared a state of emergency. This from CBS. Arizona mayor declares state of emergency amid immigration crisis. On the front line of Arizona's border battle, agents gather names and offer water to migrants before taking them to detention centers. 72 hours later, the migrants, mostly families from Central America, are released into Yuma, a city of 100,000 with just one shelter, a converted Salvation Army thrift store with 200 beds. Yuma's mayor declared a state of emergency, asking for state and federal funds. It's like if a hurricane's coming and you don't prepare for it. This is the same kind of thing, Mayor Douglas Nichols said. More than 24,000 families crossed in the Yuma sector between October of last year and this March, up 273% from the same period a year earlier. Immigrants can get stuck in Yuma for days because they can't get a bus ticket out. If there were more buses, migrants could be moved out of the community quicker. The story says apprehensions at the southwest border are at a 12-year high. Last month, almost 9,000 of those detained were unaccompanied children. What I think people don't understand about this crisis is just the word itself. It's a crisis. It's not in their community yet, but it could be, said Justin Callinger, an operations officer with U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. Asylum seekers overwhelming a border town with little relief on the horizon. There are many people on the left and the Democratic Party that are saying this is a manufactured crisis and that it's immoral to build a wall. But I don't think they're suggesting that someone is orchestrating the migrant caravans because they're here. I don't think Donald Trump is somehow creating a 10,000 strong migrant caravan and sending them through Mexico to the U.S. for some political reason. The reality is they're just coming. Why they're coming, we don't really know. They're probably coming for general migration reasons, but they're coming in very, very large numbers. Mexico just conducted the largest raid ever with 400 people detained. So I think, at least in my opinion, it's a crisis. Something is happening that needs to be solved. And at least for these two counties, there is a state of emergency. To make things worse, we saw this story a couple days ago that a few Mexican soldiers disarmed U.S. troops. An update on this story. Trump claims Mexican soldiers probably used armed confrontation with U.S. troops as a diversion for drug smugglers. The key points of the story: President Donald Trump on Wednesday said that Mexican soldiers recently pulled guns on American troops near the southern border and accused the soldiers of probably doing so as a diversionary tactic for drug smugglers. Better not happen again. We are now sending armed soldiers to the border, the president wrote in a post on Twitter. Mexico is not doing nearly enough in apprehending and returning. The confrontation between Mexico soldiers and U.S. troops happened on April 13th on American territory. Now, whether or not the Mexican soldiers were actually trying to stage some kind of diversion, that seems to be Trump's opinion. What they claim is that CBP was unmarked and they thought they were on Mexican territory. They weren't. So that's a serious issue. You can't have Mexican soldiers disarming Americans on American soil. It is a bit disconcerting. But again, whether or not it was a diversion, I think remains to be seen, and I'm going to say I probably don't think that's the case. But Donald Trump did make another misleading statement earlier when he doubled the amount of the people in the largest migrant caravan. The Washington Examiner writes today, Trump doubles number of migrants in so-called mother of all caravans. Trump said a very big caravan of over 20,000 people started up through Mexico. It has been reduced in size by Mexico, but is still coming. Mexico must apprehend the remainder, or we will be forced to close that section of the border and call up the military. The coyotes and cartels have weapons. As I noted earlier from the Washington Examiner, their statement said 10,000 migrants, not 20. According to the reporting, Trump's statement about the number of migrants is incorrect and doubled the actual amount. But he's still threatening to shut down parts of the border. So we can see the migrant crisis isn't going away. It's been referred to as a crisis by many, many people. It is not a manufactured crisis. There are more apprehensions so far this year than for all of last year, and we're only a few months in. I get it. The Democrats are going to politic, and they're not going to actually deal with this issue, but it is an issue. 2 states of emergency, tens of thousands of people coming through Mexico, Mexican raids, borders being shut down. We got a problem. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not in CBP. I'm not with ICE. I'm not a law enforcement agent. I don't know what Trump knows, and I don't know what's actually going on. But I can say this. The idea that there's some kind of conspiracy among Republicans to manufacture the amount of migrants coming through the border is absurd. That would require some ridiculous international infrastructure that would somehow convince all of these people to come up through Mexico into the United States. In reality, I think what happened early on is that many migrants were able to come. The news reports defended them, and many people saw this as an opportunity, opening the floodgates. If you're in Central America and you hear thousands of people are going to rush the border, which they did, you're hearing that thousands of people are being granted asylum, now's your chance. And so they come. And the more the Democrats stall on solving this issue, the more they will likely come. Even Bernie Sanders said, there are too many poor people and we cannot have open borders. If that's the case, it's time to do something about the migrant crisis. Trump and the Republicans are at least doing something. In this story from the Daily Caller, U.S. aggressively building Trump's border wall, DHS chief says. The acting Secretary of Homeland Security pushed back on the narrative that President Donald Trump's border wall is not being built, pointing out that construction has actually been going at an aggressive pace. Quote, so normally for a federal project of this scope, from the time you get funding to starting, it's over 2 years. We've already built the fiscal year 2017 funding in less than 2 years. That shows how aggressively we're moving out on this. The Democrats don't want to give Trump his win. That's why, in my opinion, they're resisting. But we've got a serious problem. Tens of thousands of people, and I think we're going to need some solution. If the Democrats just keep saying it's immoral and don't come with real solutions to this problem or say it's a manufactured crisis, then Trump's going to build a wall whether you like it or not. But let me know what you think in the comments below. We'll keep the conversation going. You can follow me on Minds at Timcast. Stay tuned. New videos every day at 4 p.m. Eastern. And I'll have more videos on my second channel, youtube.com/TimcastNews, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all next time.